All right, we have a very special guest for you today on our 100th episode of That Fitness Couple. She didn't even know this coming on, so she's excited too. But this guest that we have with us is a brand new, never before had guest. We actually got to host her husband previously, but she is a nutritionist who is extremely well known in the keto and carnivore space, especially for her recipes, which we'll get into. And she and her husband, Craig, actually work together. So welcome to the show, Maria Emmerich.
I am honored to be your 100th episode. And I have to tell you, I almost rescheduled because in Wisconsin in October, it is never 85 degrees. And today it is 85 degrees. I was like, I got to go kayaking. And I was like, no, these people are really awesome. I just got to stick with it and I can go kayaking afterwards.
So honored that you're here.
Yeah, we truly appreciate it. And of course, we truly appreciate as well other couples that work together, because we know that it is not the easiest thing in the world to do. It is not all unicorns and rainbows. And that's definitely not because of us guys, of course not. But no, we just truly appreciate the fact that you guys work together and you guys do such awesome stuff. So with that said, we are going to jump right into our true and false, and you have the opportunity to answer true or false with a caveat. So you ready? All right.
Ready.
Number one, you were once double your current weight.
True. Yep.
Number two, you were diagnosed with not just PCOS, but also acid reflux, depression, and IBS.
True.
Number three, you hate the ocean and whales.
False.
Number four, your health history is what drove you to become a nutritionist.
True.
Number five, you and your husband have coached thousands of people to fat loss.
True.
Number six, recipes terrify you and you avoid the kitchen at all costs.
False. I just finished a recipe. Like I ran in here.
We want to know what it is in a moment.
All right, last one, number seven. You are Halle Berry's favorite author.
Oh, well, I want to say that's true. I hope so. I think so.
I think she said it, so we could say it's true.
Yes.
Okay, it's true. I love you, Halle.
Well, so we have to know, what do you just finish cooking up in the kitchen?
So you always have to work like ahead of schedule, you know, and the holidays are coming up. It's October now, but I'm thinking about the holidays. And so I just did a French silk pie with like a carnivore type crust. And it definitely passed Kai's taste test. So it was all good.
Amazing. It's just so amazing. We have gotten so many text messages from friends. You know, did you see this recipe? Did you see this recipe? And surprisingly, they were all from you. So you're doing some really great stuff out there.
I would really love to know like what recipes everybody likes. Like maybe comment below so I can like look it up, because I want to know, like, I want to write recipes that people are driven to love. And that's why I keep going, because I don't want any excuses on why not to do it. Like I even, so have you ever watched the Gilmore Girls?
Yes.
No.
False. So my boys and I watched the Gilmore Girls, and this was a couple years ago, and they're like, Mom, what's a Pop-Tart? Because, you know, Lorelai Gilmore always eats Pop-Tarts. And he's like, what's a Pop-Tart? And I was like, let me show you. And I got to tell you, my recipe is way better than that cardboard stuff that you buy at the store. But it's definitely not, it's probably one of my harder recipes, but it's definitely worth it. So
I'm gonna say, I feel like I want that one. That sounds amazing. I lived on Pop-Tarts growing up, so that's funny.
Totally had that too.
Way better.
Yeah, and of course, you know, like bodybuilders all go through that stint where you could have Pop-Tarts post-workout.
What?
But oh yeah, it's a real thing.
I have YM. If it fits your macros, you can have it. Doesn't matter, right? Because macros don't matter. Just kidding.
A lot of those keto Pop-Tarts out there. Like, let's not get started on that.
Yeah, well, actually, we are going to get started on there at some point, because we do definitely want to talk with you a little about ingredients and, you know, the things that mistakes people make with their keto diet relative to the things that they're making in the kitchen. But before we go there, why don't you just take our audience back to how this all started for you?
It's like it's a really special story, and I love your true and false. Like that's super fun. But yeah, I was 16 years old and I was twice my size, and I was still like one of the best athletes. Like you cannot outrun a diet. I was one of the best athletes, but I was really big. And I went to the family doctor and I didn't even tell my parents I was going. I wasn't feeling well. And the doctor told me I had something called PCOS, which is basically a type 2 diabetes that affects female fertility. She said, you probably can't have your own children. I did have depression, and she's like, okay, let's get on an antidepressant. I had IBS, so she gave me a medication for that. And I also had acid reflux really bad. And she gave me a medication for that, which is so interesting because when I work with clients in Europe or other areas of the world, you never go on an acid blocker longer than 2 weeks. It clearly states that on the box. But in the United States, they put babies on it. And if it doesn't work, they put the babies on 2 of them. And then by the time they're 20, they have holes in their intestines. Anyway, so this was 26 years ago now. You can do the math, how old I am. But I didn't want to take any of those medications. And that very same week, I took my golden retriever who was losing patches of her hair to the vet. And the first question the vet asked was, what are you feeding her? And it was just like cheap dog food. I wasn't rich. I was like, it's just cheap dog food. And they're like, yeah, that's why. And so I was like, the doctor told me it was nothing I was doing wrong. It was just the cards I was dealt in life. But let me tell you, I worked at a coffee shop where before school started, I would go to the coffee shop and I would make the scones and the muffins and the cinnamon rolls. And then after high school, so I would go do that. And then after school was done, I would come back to the coffee shop, and we would close about 5:30, and whatever didn't sell, I got to go home with. You think I'm kidding, but I would make extra cinnamon rolls just so I would have dinner. And like the muffin top thing, like on Seinfeld, like I had so many muffins. I was just like, oh, the muffin tops. Like, yeah. With that diagnosis, I really had to look into what caused all these issues. And there wasn't the internet back then. But if you look into what causes PCOS, because that was pretty shocking, like you can't have kids, it's excess caffeine, sugar, and carbohydrates. And I really don't want people to ignore the caffeine part, okay? Caffeine, sugar, and carbohydrates. So I really had to change my entire diet, but I didn't want to live off of, I didn't want to give up cinnamon rolls. So I just started creating some of my favorite things. Like my mom is not a cook. She's a terrible cook, but I'm a foodie. I really like tasty food. I do not want a dry Pop-Tart. And so I just started recreating my favorite things into being delicious food and learning about food and what makes delicious flavors, like fish sauce, like how to add flavor. So I just started doing that. And I just would cook for myself and my family and friends. And then when I met Craig, I was only 17. And I told him that I couldn't have children, and he's like, let's adopt. I was like, that's what I want to do, and it was really cool. And so we started the adoption process, and sadly he lost his job. I know that he talked about this with his in his video with you guys. And the depression came back hard, and we couldn't pay our house payment anymore. The bank got our house, we sold our cars. I literally rode my bicycle to the library to write, but it gave me a reason to wake up. My friend's like, you're going to start a blog. I was like, what's a blog? This is before blogs were a thing. I was like, okay, a blog, right? So I started a blog, I started writing my book, and it just gave me a reason to wake up because all of that was going towards our adoption. It gave me a reason to wake up, make money so we can get these boys home. Before you know it, it was like gangbusters. People loved it. I was like, really? This is cool. And it wasn't called keto then. This was before keto was the cool term, but it was a keto diet. I feel grateful for that really hard time because I still live very simply. I don't need a lot of things. I don't even have a car. It's all good, because I found happiness without the stuff,
Beautiful. I mean, there's so many pieces of that story that I want to hone in on. I guess my biggest question is, as you're going and doing this research in the library, what was it that made you go more of this higher fat and protein in your recipes route as opposed to any other direction like vegan or paleo or anything else?
Well, it was pretty clear that, I had to stay away from carbohydrates and sugar. And I mean, a vegan diet's pretty high carbs. I mean, that's all it is, right? It's low protein, low fat. It's all carbs.
Can you say it again for the audience? Wait,
Vegan
vegetables have
all
carbs? Is that what
It's
you're saying?
all, which is sugar to me. When I say carbs, it's sugar. So a vegan diet's all sugar. That's just that. Let's make that clear, which is exactly opposite what you'd want for an anti-cancer diet. Let's just make that clear, because I know that like that's a huge route people go to when they do get a diagnosis of cancer. They suggest a vegan diet, which I think is ridiculous.
I guess it makes sense. Like you just wanted to eliminate sugar.
I wanted to eliminate sugar and I wanted to feel good again. And when I ate a lot of like broccoli and vegetables, I always got gassy and the IBS got worse. It didn't make me feel better. So eliminating plants, like the more I eliminated those, like the better I felt. And I never filled any of those prescriptions. And I didn't lose weight right away, but my depression went away right away. Like that first week, I felt like a new person. And I was like, I'm in. I am in. Like this is living. Like I feel good. I want to wake up again. I'm happy. And the fact that everybody thought I couldn't do it. So I know that I tell people to surround yourself with people that support you and lift you up in your like lifestyle choices. However, the fact that everybody thought I was going to fail and my mom made me my favorite pie, like it was temptation city. It made me want to do it more and made me want to do it harder. And it made me want to help people get on the train, right? So it was kind of like a big FU to everybody else that, you know, I'm a stubborn German girl. Tell me I can't do something, watch me, right?
Well,
I
that's awesome. And you know, it speaks so much to the mindset though. And what I find, you know, really encouraging is that when you started, you did not see the immediate success with respect to your fat loss. And that I think is the trouble for many people, is that they go on this journey because initially it is a fat loss issue, despite maybe all of the other conditions that they may be suffering from. For whatever reason, people really latch on to their body weight. And of course, that does tie into mindset and depression and how we feel about ourselves. But you know, you did not experience that initial success. But I think what's important is that you experienced some success and that you were able to see something right away that then allowed you to continue down this path. So how long did it take you until you did start to see some changes in your body composition?
Well, I want to make it clear, like the depression went away. I never needed acid reflux medicine. And after that, like eliminating sugar and carbs was like, and gluten was like a huge thing for me. So the acid reflux went away. The IBS went away with like the sugar and the plants, you know. But the weight loss was once I didn't call it protein sparing, but they were my pure protein days, which I probably should have stuck with the term, but I called them my pure protein days. And that's what I wrote about. And it was basically like I had to lower the fat down. I had to give up the dairy, which I know, right? But focusing on lean proteins, and like, boom, my body composition really changed. And it wasn't every day that I did that. Initially, it was about 3 days a week. I would focus on pure protein. And usually days I was really busy with work and, you know, college and all that. Like you don't even have time to think about food. Like just throw down some protein and get on with your day. And it worked really well for me. And then I would also have one overfeeding day, which was not a Pizza Hut day, but it was like ribs or chicken wings or, you know, the more fattier cuts of meat. I loved ribs. And so it was usually baby back ribs. I really had to give up the dairy and I really had to focus on protein. And that's when like a whole nother level of healing happened. But initially it was a lot of dairy. It was fatty meats and, you know, like heavy cream and all that. Like it was just too much. And I think like that's an important message to get across, because there's a big message saying, oh, you need to eat fat to burn fat. Like what? Like look at the biology. Yes, we're all different. I understand that. But when you look at the biology of our bodies, they are the same. Hormones, all that are different. But the biology of where the fat goes is the same. And so focusing on protein gave me better hair. It gave me like better body composition, better nails. Like it's all good.
Interesting, because very recently we started working with a lot more carnivores, and many of them were coming from the very, very high fat diet. And it was sitting them down and explaining, you know, yeah, fat is important, but only to an extent. You only need so much. And then beyond that, it's a point of diminishing returns.
Steak already has fat in it. You don't need to add a stick of butter to it. And just think about how unnatural that is. Our Neanderthals, they weren't getting a butter churner out there. Like they didn't have a butter churner. They just ate the woolly mammoth, right?
It's so true. And personally, just said, and I love your hair. So great job. With that though, it is so funny. And what I recently heard on an interview though, that you shared is where that fat goes. And I think it's important. So I want to just really make clear two things. The first is we're not afraid of fat, but it's the excessive use of fat. It's people that are saying 200 grams of fat a day. It's just unnecessary. Can you explain where that fat goes and what actually comes out in our bowels?
We're not afraid of fat. It's just, and now that I'm lean, here's the thing too, protein's not a good energy source. So you need to either get your energy from carbohydrates or fat. But if you have a lot of body fat, you could use that for energy. However, if you're eating a lot of dietary fat, there's no need to tap into that body fat for energy. But then once you're lean, and I'm an athlete, so now that I'm lean and an athlete, I do use fat as my energy source rather than carbohydrates. So let's just make that clear.
Where the fat goes in our body. I thought that was so fascinating. You shared what comes out, what stays in.
Study after study shows that no matter if you're eating 30 grams of fat a day or 130 grams of fat a day, it's really only about 8% goes through the stool. It might have gone up to like 10% that went through the stool with like 108, grams of fat, but it's still a very small amount goes through the stool. Do you remember those chips called Wow chips? You're probably too young.
You and I are closer in age. And so I totally remember those.
Yeah, they were called Wow chips because you would get explosive diarrhea. They had a warning on them. They were made with Olestra. And that's only the amount of fat that went to your stool only goes up to maybe like 20%, if that. So even that little bit of shift in percentage that's going through your stool gives you explosive diarrhea, which nobody wants that. So where is the fat going? If it only 8% is going through the stool, it's going into storage, or you could use it for energy. So unless you're running marathons or, working out really hard, it's going to storage. Like that, it has one fate. That's what our bodies do. It's not like, and sure, there's some that's going to building hormones and that type of stuff, the myelin sheath. But again, that's a small percentage. The majority is going to storage.
So with respect to when, I don't know, maybe if this was your focus at the time, if you got this deep into it, or it's what you do with people now when you're working with them, is there a percentage that you try to keep fat at or under?
We have, I don't know if you need a free macro calculator, but Craig's brilliant. You had an interview with him. He made this amazing macro calculator for people to use. And it's absolutely free. It's on ketomaria.com, but you can figure out your macros because your macros are going to be different than mine. And your lean mass is different than mine, which is going to be different. And your goals are different than mine. So depending on your goals, your lean mass, how active you are you pregnant, breastfeeding, man, woman, that's going to give you and I don't do percentages because that usually sets you up for failure. But following macros is going to help you a lot more. So that macro calculator will give you your carbohydrates, which is a maximum. It'll give you your fat, which is a maximum. And then your protein is a goal. You can go over that, but nobody likes to read. So I just want that clear. And then it also, if you want them, will give you your protein sparing modified fasting days, those macros also.
Don't lie. I reached out to your husband no more than a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And I was like, Craig, you guys have the best macro calculator I have ever come across. Seriously. Yeah. And I was like, where'd you get this? Who did this for you? And so we were conversing about it because I think it actually is great. And then, tell everybody right now, we'll put it in the show notes, obviously, but is it at ketoadapted.com that they can find that, or
ketomaria.com?
Okay.
I mean, on keto-adapted, that's our community site where we will do your macros for you and stuff. But the free, if you go to ketomaria.com, you'll find the free, you can do it yourself. And it's very accurate. I mean, it gives you guidelines of how to find out your lean mass, but most people, they overestimate their lean mass because they do not want to admit that they're 50% body fat.
That's the truth bomb there. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I got a lot of use out of it myself. And the reason why I liked it was because it was so in alignment with the general recommendations that we would give around those. And the one thing though that I want to touch on, I think it's important for people to get an idea of where they're at or where they should be with respect to protein intake and fat intake and even, you know, their carb limits. But how much do you see that working against people sometimes with respect to tracking what they're doing and getting maybe a little neurotic about their nutrition?
You know, we like to take that away from them so they don't have that, because what we then do is we have them pull in my recipes and it just either fits or not. And so like, I'm like, oh, let's move this to this day and kind of switch it around. So it automatically like fits in their macros, and they can still have everything they want, maybe just in a different like order, or, you know, that type, like maybe these two recipes shouldn't go together. Have this one on this day, and then let's throw a protein sparing recipe in there to increase the protein and keep the fat at a good level. So just kind of messing around. So it's never a no, you can't have that. It's just, let's have this on this day. And I think like I like when you talk about mindset, because that is huge. When people come to you or to me or whatever, and they're like, oh, I can't have rice anymore, I can't have bread anymore. You're going to fail. You're going to fail. But if you're like, what? I get to have steak every day if I want. I can have chicken wings and ribs. Like, you will succeed. Or like, what? Maria has a cinnamon roll recipe I can have? You will succeed. But that's about life in general. Like when I was told I couldn't have children, yes, it was like, boom, that's weird. But I was able to, instead of being all, you know, those women that get very depressed, right? I was like, I'm going to change the world and bring people into my home that need a mother and a father. And I felt very empowered to do that. But whatever it is in life, if you're very negative, nobody wants to be around you. It's like, you have to flip that mindset. You have to.
I love that so much. I love even how you felt almost rebellious against people that wanted to prove you wrong in your feat to achieve better health through nutrition. I think it is all too often that we, and I'm sure you and Craig, speak to clients where they're like, oh, I have type 2 diabetes, and it almost becomes a life sentence for them, where I'm like, it's reversible. Like, what are you talking about? You know, I feel like we're too willing as human beings to accept a diagnosis as our fate and not take ownership or control of our health. And that's why we so appreciate what you are doing in the space that you're in, because it shows people you're a testimonial of your own work, you know?
I would love to talk right now about your transition. You started off very, very keto. I mean, you're keto, Maria, right? So you very much started off keto, and it just seems as of more recent, you and Craig have gone a little bit more the carnivore route. So what evidence were you seeing that said, you know what, maybe we need to detour just a little bit and go on this path with respect to, again, a higher protein, higher fat diet?
I think it was it 8 years ago now? And I know I don't want to cry on you guys. Craig wasn't doing well. And I was like, dude, you're in your 40s and you can't walk. And he kept blaming it on an old football injury. And I'm like, there's something bigger, like something's not right. And so he found out that he had Lyme disease, and he probably had it at that point for 10 years. That was, you know, undiagnosed, which caused his immune system to be very weak. And now he has something called ankylosing spondylitis, where your joints kind of fuse, they calcify and they turn to bone. And so now he's very self-conscious because he, like, you know, walks with a hunchback, but you can't reverse that. So like all those really nice carnivores out there saying like, you can reverse anything with a carnivore diet. Like, come on, people, be smart. He manages his pain with a carnivore type diet. And that's why we went this way, because even, you know, just learning about plants in general, we wrote the Carnivore Cookbook, which is not just a cookbook, which I shouldn't say just a cookbook because that's really hard to write, but it is very educational, the first half. And it talks about like anti-nutrients and plants and where the nutrients are. And you don't have to eat any plants to get the most nutrient dense food. And it was really eye-opening to me because my kids never liked vegetables, right? They were basically carnivores because that's all they liked. And my parents, I love them dearly. I know I've talked about them a few times, but love them dearly. But they were very like, your kids don't eat vegetables, Maria. Like, this is not healthy, right? And the charts that Craig made, I was like, boom, boom, and boom. Like, they're good. You don't need to worry because all those vegetables you are eating have anti-nutrients in them, like oxalates and things like that. And my mom still doesn't like to talk about it. She thinks I'm crazy, but it made me feel very comfortable the way my children were eating. Like, that's all that they like. They don't like, I remember my mom tried to like give my kid like $2 to eat like asparagus. He's like, nope, not doing it. Right. But if Craig does have, like, we were at dinner and someone made us burger patties, without the bread, and they had a little bit of like coleslaw on the top, and he was being nice and he ate it instead of throwing it off the side. And he was in pain for days. Like, sure, I don't have that reaction, but knowing what it does to him, there's something to that, right? Like, there's some real deep, like those anti-nutrients and things like that stay away from. And the more I talk to people about oxalates, like even on this past, I was just in Croatia on a retreat, and about 3 of the people on the retreat talked about their oxalate dumping, and they're all different. And they were calcium oxalates. Like one of them had them in her like saliva glands, and her like mouth would hurt terribly. Someone had them in their toes and it hurt. But oxalate dumping is a real thing. But just learning about the nutrients and where they're at, and like, I really love what I eat every day. I don't feel like I'm missing out. Yeah, sure. In the beginning, there was some almond flour. It wasn't a daily thing. And I don't think that's a big problem too with this keto diet. Like, they're like eating, keto cupcakes every day and muffins. Like, you wouldn't eat cupcakes and muffins on a diet anyway. Like, let's not do that now. Maybe it's a treat, right? But now you can make my like protein sparing muffins that don't have any nuts or nut flours in them. But I digress. No, I don't feel like I'm missing out at all. And I feel stronger than ever, smaller, but stronger than ever, eating primarily meat.
It's so interesting. And I love that you shared that it's a journey, because especially for us, we were keto for about 3 years. And, it was all of the fat bombs and breads and the muffins and the keto cookies. I'm like, oh, cookies. But you're absolutely right. Prior to that, I'm not eating cookies. So why am I eating them now? There's almost too much wiggle room in that keto space to be able to just go hog wild. So what would you say in your experience are like the top ingredients that people really should like use caution with? Are there ones that maybe really interact poorly with people generally? Like, what would you have people look out for?
Nut flours for sure, because like you said, majority people come to this space for weight loss. And when you think of nuts and nut flours, they're primarily fat and carbohydrates. Fat plus carbohydrates is a great way for weight gain. That is weight gain. And that's avocados. There's no protein in avocados. It's fat and carbohydrates. I never thought of those as a good keto food. But I don't know why, you say keto and an avocado pops in your head, right? So like I would say nuts, nut flours, and avocado, think twice about those.
So like artificial sweeteners, that's always a big topic. Some people, they feel disruption in their stomach.
I get bloated. I get very bloated from stuff like that. So what's your experience?
I'm very particular about the ones I allow. And there's 4 of them that like, cause I don't like a sucralose, no, aspartame, no, cause there's definitely artificial sweeteners. And then there's natural sweeteners. So when you say artificial, are you considering the natural ones to be artificial?
I wouldn't necessarily say so, but I think that for a lot of people, there's a lot of confusion around that. I mean, what truly is natural? People will look at stevia, and then you can also as a natural sweetener. But from my understanding, and again, I'm more than happy to be corrected wrong. Like there's nothing to say that stevia is the best solution for when it comes to any type of sweetener. That maybe it's not all it's cracked up to be. And it's just interesting too, because I love studying researchers and seeing their take on it. And a lot has come out more recently around artificial sweeteners that, maybe it's not so bad. And so I'm just always curious about people's takes on it. I mean, you obviously have an interesting one because you're distinguishing between what's artificial, what's natural. So why don't we just start with that? I mean, what are the list of the ones that you find to be totally, absolutely okay to be including in the ingredients?
Well, I will say I'm going to give you the link, but I have a link to Guide to Natural Sweeteners, because I talk about the natural ones like coconut sugar and honey and like all the other ones that sure they might not raise your blood sugar as much, but they're higher in fructose, like agave. Is 90% fructose and what that does to your liver. So I'm going to give you that link so everybody can read about that. But the ones I allow are stevia, but I also write about how you have to be careful when you buy this. Because if you go to the grocery store, you're going to see stevia in the raw. Have you seen that? It's a big green bag. Stevia in the raw, I think the first ingredient is maltodextrin. And maltodextrin has a glycemic index of 110. Sugar has a glycemic index of 52. So if you think that you're going to lose weight and feel great and all that, no, because maltodextrin is a corn derivative. But again, you can find that in everything. You find it in taco seasoning. You find it in so many different things. So you really have to be a detective. So stevia is one. I usually like stevia glycerite because it's a non-bitter stevia. There's monk fruit. There's allulose, which is the new player on the field. And Dr. Perlmutter wrote a great article about the benefits of using that, how it helps with your insulin, it helps with your blood sugar and all that. However, if you do too much, you're probably going to have a little bit of upset stomach. But I don't think anything in too, much is a good thing anyway. Erythritol, that one is good. So those are the ones that I would allow. But again, like, if you want to eliminate sweeteners, you can do it. Like if you give yourself 15 days, you will have new taste buds in 15 days on your mouth, on your tongue, and you will lose that sweet taste. That's why another reason I went, carnivore is like to help with Craig. However, I ended up losing a lot of weight because I just wasn't interested in food anymore because it was really boring. And so I did open up the gates to a few things that without adding anti-nutrients, and it gave me more pleasure. And I needed to bulk up a little bit.
That's totally understandable. And we've seen and experienced it ourselves and with other clients too, that, carnivore is great. I think that if there is one knock on it, is that in combination with too much intermittent fasting, and now you can put yourself at high risk of muscle loss. And it's troubling because you don't have an appetite. You literally do not feel like eating. And we hear this all the time from people. It's like, I understand you don't want to eat, but you need to eat. And you most especially have to be hitting some protein targets if we're going to prevent any type of sarcopenia, because that is the biggest issue. Is as people age, you have age-related muscle loss, and you don't want to be contributing to it because you are grossly under eating.
Yeah. OMAD was a big thing for a while. Like it was, you got to eat OMAD. You have to like get into the autophagy and all of this. So I really got into OMAD, plus on top of not really being interested in food anymore with the carnivore lifestyle. And I think most of my energy was focused on trying to help Craig get better. And I'm a helper. I'm a healer. Like I try to help people, right? And I couldn't help him. And I think like that took a lot out of my heart. So like, yeah, I did OMAD and I know I didn't need enough protein in one meal. It's hard to get that much protein in one meal. And so I lost a lot of muscle, and I'm working at getting it back, but it's not easy.
I actually want to dive in here, and I just want the listener to really take away what you just said. And that is when we talked about PCOS and IBS, those were things you had. Whereas when you say things like I'm a helper and I'm a healer, like those are things you are. And I love how naturally and beautiful that was. And I just want to point those two things out to the listener, that maybe you're saying like, I'm sick or I'm not well. We don't want to assume those things as our identity. And again, you beautifully do that naturally, subconsciously. That's what comes out.
You.
But that's the beautiful thing about this, is really like digging in here, making choices out here. But it's whatever we believe is what we attract. It's what we become. And for you to go around saying like, I am a helper and I am a healer, girl, you're doing that every single day.
Oh, thank you. No, I do feel like that with Craig. Like Craig has ankylosing spondylitis, and it's like a thing I want to take out of him, and I don't know how. And at this point, it's never going to probably leave his body, but we can, he does a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, and that makes him be able to function and play with the kids. And it's one of the reasons why we do go to the ocean in the wintertime, is because this time of year when it gets cold, it gets to the point where he's using crutches. It's very hard to walk and move. And then we get to this humid, warm climate, and he can run, not run, but he can play on the beach, throw the football with the boys. It's like, it's so interesting how and we don't wear shoes really for 6 months either. It's interesting how that shift in climate really shifts his body. But I've heard that from many, many people with Lyme, that the winter's very hard on them.
Yeah, Mike actually was diagnosed with Lyme. But again, we fortunately, through a client, caught it early, and he did go through the antibiotic round, and again, manages it with lifestyle, diet.
And then the integrative medicine route. And that's really what cleared it out for me. But again, to your point, the important thing is that it was caught early. And in Craig's case, he sat with it for 10 years. And I know that when we spoke about it, I mean, part of the reason why he wasn't caught was because his lifestyle and nutrition was so good that sort of masked the problem until it really did hit its tipping point.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really interesting. I'd like to just go back though for a moment. I want to point out something and then ask a question. You have gone through many different phases. So your journey has not been linear at all with respect to nutrition. And I think this is also just important for the listener to comprehend that if you right now are struggling with something and you're listening to this conversation, you're saying, okay, this sounds great. Keep in mind that all of us on this call right now, we all started somewhere a little bit different, and our approach to it had to be a little bit different. Now, maybe we arrived at a place where what we're doing now is considered the ideal, but it might not be that way forever. And we may find that there's opportunity or a need to make a shift. And I think that also delves into the mindset piece here, because how many people feel as though, oh, I can't do carnivore, like that's too restrictive. It's like, nobody says you have to do this forever. Maybe this is what you need right now in this season of your life. And at another season, keto might be the right transition out of this. Who knows? But you don't know until you get going. So you said that you did OMAD for a while. What does your nutrition look like now? What does your day typically line up like?
I love that you brought this up, because if someone would have told me you're only going to eat meat when I was 16 years old, I would have been like, what? No, not even trying that. Like, I wouldn't even gone there at all. Like, I did not like steak. I did not like meat. And to say like I eat steak like twice a day is pretty wild, right? But I did not, it evolves. And I think that you are going to continue, you personally, both of you will continue to evolve to be amazing. And you are amazing. But like, I think when people get stuck and think that their way is the right way and the only way, then you're into trouble. But if you're always, like you said, you're always researching and learning, just like we are too, that's when you're going to move mountains. But there's definitely those people that are stuck. They think their way is the only way and the right way. You have to realize, like, my diet was different, 26 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, last year. Now it keeps evolving to getting better and better and better. And that's what's important. Like, always becoming the best you that you can, right? So, and even like, the OMAD thing, and I'm a runner, and Craig did a great interview with Dr. Lehman, who's like the protein, king doctor. And he said something eye-opening that I heard him talk to Craig about, is that runners need about, I think he said 30% more protein than a non-runner. And I was like, whoa. And it's exactly what he said. It's exact opposite. People like that are bodybuilders, they focus on protein, so they're not a problem. But the runners are usually the carb people. And not that I was a carb person, but I definitely did not get 30% more protein than I should have. And I'm still a runner. And Craig just said, will you please eat right after your run? Because I'm usually not hungry then, right? I'm like on a high. And so I took that to heart. I was like, yes, I can do that. And so I get up very early. I'm still an early bird that wants to, make the scones and the muffins and the cinnamon rolls, but I'm a very early riser. And then once the sun starts peeking out, I actually lift weights now. I lift weights for probably 20 minutes and then I run, which it used to just be running. That's all. So I shifted that to lift weights again. I used to lift weights a lot, but So I'll switch off upper body and lower body, right, every day. And then I'll run, and then I'll eat, and it's always a tenderloin steak. I really like the lean steak, but then I make the best carnivore sauce. You can find it on my YouTube. It's really, really good. And I'll have that smothered in my steak. It's really good. And then I'll continue working, writing recipes, podcasts, clients, whatever. And then I have lunch, and that's usually I'm on a halibut kick right now. And so I'll have a big piece of halibut, maybe some mushrooms. I find those like on that carnivore, maybe, because they're not a plant, they're not an animal. It's like a gray area. I really love sauces. So I have the sauce. It's really good on there. Has some garlic in there, ginger. Then I also will have dinner. And that's usually either, I know it could be my bread. Have you tried the protein bread?
I gotta find egg white powder. That's like my biggest hang, or egg white protein, right?
Yeah. Well, it's just dried egg whites.
Is that all it is?
It's just dried egg whites. You can find it in like Thailand.
Okay, I will go today.
I just get it on Amazon. I mean, it's just, I don't like to go to the store, so I'd rather be on my bicycle. So I'll either, have something that it's usually like some more fish or steak or something like that, just because I really, really like it. And then I always finish with, have you tried the Equip shakes?
Yeah.
So it's made from beef. I really like it. And so I'll have like it's like kind of like my dessert. And that's the thing, like when I took, I just got back from Croatia, and then I was in Italy too. And there's no judging on my trips. If you want to have gelato, whatever, but I'm going to teach you everything you need to know. And so like, while they're having gelato, I'm having my little strawberry shake, which is beef, which I feel plenty good about. And I'm like having a dessert with them, but it's different, right? So that's how I do it. I pack that with me when I travel. So, and that's just a way to get some more protein in. But yeah, so I'm probably at, I don't know, 140 grams of protein a day, something like that.
That's a good healthy amount. And I think what's important, and
I'm really short. I'm like only 1 3/4. And so like my lean mass, if I ate for my lean mass, it would probably be like more like 80 grams of protein. So I think like almost double is pretty good.
Yeah,
Amazing.
no, absolutely. And I think what's important for people too, though, here in how you described your day is that you are getting 3 servings of protein in per day. And that is the challenge for especially many women, especially women of smaller stature. It's hard for me to eat all this protein. And that's where I feel that sometimes, especially on carnivore, people have to break away from being so dogmatic about their intermittent fasting and staying on a 16-8 and understanding that, hey, you may need to open up your feeding window just so that you can give yourself the amount of protein that you're going to need throughout the day. And
I personally, I don't like to be really full. So that's why OMAD really was not, it was a big hammer for me, because I really hate that feeling of, so I'd rather have smaller servings 3 times a day. And I still probably do like a 16-8, but it's not at one window, or maybe it's not whatever it is, but I feel way healthier. My energy's way better. My moods are way better eating 3 smaller meals. I love it. Like,
I actually want to go into your retreats, but first I just wanted to touch on your children. So your boys very much eat in alignment with you and Craig. And I think that that's fascinating to most parents, because we are inundated with commercials and marketing and advertising geared towards garbage. Let's just be honest. So how, and this can be an obvious question for you, but for the listener that's like has their kids eating real Pop-Tarts or animal crackers or whatever it might be, how would you direct someone based on your experience to move their children away from so much of that processed nonsense?
The younger they are, the better you're going to be, the easier it is. Especially like when I see a 2-year-old eating French fries, I'm just like, oh, man, they shouldn't even know what that is. Like when my boys were, 5 and 6, we would drive by McDonald's and my son would say, M is for Micah. And I was like, I love that you don't know what that is. And we were staying at this cabin retreat thing. It was like a rental cabin. And I was like, boys, pick up your Legos. And so they're picking up their Legos and they're like, Mom, something wrong with this Lego. It's round and it has an M on it. It was an M&M, you know, like some other kid left an M&M there, right? And I was like, it's not a Lego. Let's just put that in the garbage. But they don't know what that is. And that's what it should be, right? And if they are young enough, they don't have a car, they don't have a license, they don't have any money. Like, you are in charge. And this whole idea of let them be kids, what? We plan for our kids' future with college. We plan for vacations. We plan for a car. But to think that, oh, I don't have enough time to plan dinner tonight, like, come on, nobody's busier than I am. Stop it. Like, I wrote 3 books last year. I'm working with celebrities, like clients, like I have a sick husband. We homeschool our children. Do not tell me you are busier than I am. I make sure I work out every day. Like, come on. It is a priority to me. It is my priority. And there's no way I believe I could accomplish all of that if I did not feed myself and my family well, because the kids would be bouncing off the walls and there would not be structure. I wouldn't be able to handle the stress as well. And that's a big thing too. Like, life is not all like hunky-dory. There's a lot of stressors. And I know that I would not be able to handle them if I did not feed myself well.
Yes to all of that. I love the arguments that we all make. Your kids don't have a vehicle to go to the store. Our 6-year-old will convince you that he can ask our teenage neighbor, who probably would go for him because he's like a little boss 6-year-old. But it is so amazing. And two, what people don't consider is how that does affect your stress resilience when you're not eating properly. Your brain fog. I mean, those things that we will, again, I don't want to go down this path right now because I want to talk about your retreats, but we'll diagnose kids so quickly, just like you and I were diagnosed. It's IBS, here's a med. You're depressed, here's a med. But your dog goes to the vet, wait a second, what is your dog eating? People are not asking, wait a second, what are kids eating? It's just, oh, they're hyperactive. Oh, they're just crazy. Oh, they can't focus. Are you kidding me? I love that so much, and how it brings structure. We also homeschool our 2 boys, and it definitely, I will say, it's easier and it's harder. It's easier to keep some of that stuff away because they're not sitting at a lunch table with other kids where they're eating it. But also, by the same token, I think that's so much more empowering. Our kids are in a hybrid homeschool program right now. And so they're going in with protein balls. They're going in with snacks that are different, maybe lots of beef sticks, things that their friends like, wait, what is that? What is that? And it's such a beautiful way to spin it, instead of like, oh, I'm not allowed to have M&Ms, in my snack. It's like, yeah, this is awesome. I love eating this.
But it's the education also. It's that when somebody asks them about what they're eating, like, they actually understand why they're eating this way, because we take the time to try to educate them as best as we can. And we're not going to be the parents that tell them, oh, you can never have a taste of ice cream or anything like that, because we know that, again, psychologically down the road, you don't want them to go on a bender once they reach the age in which they could jump in their own car and do things like, oh, my parents never gave me this, that rebellion. It's like a kid who grew up oftentimes. I mean, I went to college in Ohio, so I knew a lot of kids from the Midwest who grew up very sheltered, and then they got to college and it was like, whoa, you're not making it past the first semester. And we don't want that to happen with respect to food with kids. So I think that there is like a nice balance there. But the more that we can educate them and help them to understand, hey, this is what this does to your body.
But then again, I don't think there's any food that my kids haven't had. Like, I have a gummy bear recipe. I have a Pop-Tart. I have a Hostess Ding Dong. I have all of those recipes that they can try. But we were in Disney World and like, pick whatever you want. And they picked like keto food. Like, I was like, really? It would just warm my heart. Like, my son's birthday's coming up. He's like, Mom, this is the funny one that does the videos. He's like, Mom, I'm going to have a cheat day. I was like, a cheat day? Tell me more. Like, what is it? Right. And he goes, you know your whipped cream canister? It's like, yeah. He's like, I'm going to fill that baby up and not share it with anybody. And I was like, you go for it. You have all the whipped cream you want, and that's the thing. Like, we do have ice cream, and we do have, all of because like we do the homeschool camp thing, which is like 2 miles down the road. And they were having ice cream sundaes. And I was like, hey, Kai, if you decide to pass, I will have ice cream sundaes at home for you. And he's like, I don't want that sugar. And sometimes it's so bad where we're on the beach and the kids are eating a bunch of apples and they're like, the apples are just sugar. I'm like, we're trying to make friends now. Like, let's just not go there.
All the time. I'm like, this is why you can't go to public school, because you'll see things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, let's just make friends on the beach and play football with them. We don't need to talk to them about sugar.
Or working out or anything like that, right? Talk to us about these retreats. You have some amazing pictures in Africa, Croatia, you mentioned, Italy, I mean, all over the world. Why do you do these retreats, and why is it so important for people to be in community, not just together, but also eating on these retreats?
Well, first off, I never thought I'd ever be able to afford to travel. Let's just say that. Like, I watched every movie about traveling because I never thought I could afford to travel. Okay. Like, the bank took my house. Like, it's all, and so when this woman reached out and she said, "Hey, Maria, I want to do retreats with you and let's go to Italy." I'm like, "Craig, some lady just Facebook messaged me to do retreats in Italy." And he's like, "Give her your phone number. Let's talk to her." And we are best friends to this day. Her name's Juliana. She grew up in Italy and she still has her family house in Italy. She married a man in California. They are just like the nicest couple ever. And so she plans these retreats. And I just kind of was like, "Hey, let's go to Croatia." And so she did a Croatia retreat and Greece and like we went to Bali, and it's just so cool. Like, we were just in Croatia and like, we have these dinners together and they made us a healthy cake. And I'm like, yeah, right. What's in this healthy cake, right? They sent me the ingredients list. I was like, oh my gosh, this is really a keto cake. Everything I would eat, but I like burrata better. So I had burrata for dessert instead. Do you know what burrata is?
Oh yeah.
Oh man, it's like the best, right? So I'd prefer that for dessert. So, but it's so nice, especially when I'm planning everybody else's life. You're planning all your clients' life, your kids' life. I just show up. I usually don't even look at the itinerary just because I want it to be a surprise. And, think about who's coming on the retreats. They're not going to be like crabby people. They're always so fun. They're so nice. Like, I laugh so much. And, it's hard for me to make friends because we homeschool. Like, I'm working all the time, and it's just a great way to make friends. And yeah, we're eating together. And again, there's no judging. So like, some people came with friends that weren't keto and they didn't eat keto, but they went home and they're like, I think I'm going to try this, like they learned so much that it was hard to not want to give up some sugar and stuff. But that's what I want people to know, is there's no judging. Like, if you want gelato, if you want wine, if you want, risotto, whatever, I don't care, but I will teach you to the point where you'll be inspired to change. And that's usually how it goes. Like, hey, and what my favorite part is most people are repeat customers. So like, if they've been on one retreat, they usually come back, which says a lot about how much fun we have. And most of them are shrinking. Like, every time they come, they keep shrinking. So it's pretty cool to see that.
I think what's so awesome about it, though, is taking people outside of their normal environment to teach them and educate them. Because, of course, when you are coaching people, and let's say you're just coaching them online, and what comes up? Oh my gosh, next month I have this vacation. What am I supposed to do? And it's almost as if food doesn't exist in this other place that you're going to go. And it's like, you can still follow the same way of eating. And that's what I think is so amazing about the retreats, is the opportunity, like you said, to teach people this is how you can eat while you're away. And of course, in my estimation, Italy is one of the best places to go, not because of the pasta, but because of the steak. The Florentine steak is actually the most popular food in northern Italy. And most people just think pasta, pasta, pasta. We have such a US mentality around this. And it's like, no, this is actually how they eat. This is the food that they're consuming. And it is largely animal-based. It's not as carb heavy as people think.
No, I had the best seafood, and especially in Croatia, the best seafood I've ever had. And the burrata, I mean, that's my dessert when I go there. Like, this is so amazing. And then I pack a stick blender with me, and I usually make a sauce. Like I told you, I'm a saucy girl. And so I usually make a sauce. I know this sounds weird, but everybody at the table knows Maria has her sauce in her purse. And because I love flavor, and if it's dry, I can at least save it with some sauce or whatever. And I don't know all the time, if it's like, if they have a peppercorn sauce, which I like on a steak, sometimes it has gluten because they used demi-glaze or whatever. So sometimes it's like iffy to use different sauces of theirs if they have gluten or whatever. And I don't want to go there. So I can get all the stuff at the grocery store and just make it, and I pack it with me, and it's fun. I love it.
Amazing.
I think we will.
I hope you come.
I know.
Definitely will, definitely will. And with that said, I want to just very quickly also ask you, where do whales fit in? Okay, because you can go to your website and we can see videos about whales and you literally being eat from whales. So you got to fill us in on this one.
So it is illegal to like approach a whale. I just want that clear. And this is why they call me the whale whisperer, because of course I'm sitting out there for a long time, but if they always come to me, and we have videos, like I put my phone in the water, they're coming right to me. And a commercial actually bought that video. A mom and baby come right towards me, and the baby's like trying to flip me off my paddleboard with their tail. But yeah, it's pretty, it's the coolest. Like my face hurts just thinking about it, because it's just like the coolest experience of my life. But I think like I just feel very attached to those whales, and they come back to the same place every year, so it's probably the same whales that are coming back and back and back, and maybe they just know that Maria's gentle, don't worry. Yeah, I just feel very blessed to be able to do that. And you know, when I have a bad day or whatever, life's getting stressed out, I just paddle and kind of just hang out there. I bow hunt also, so I'm used to just being very patient with animals, and they usually come.
Amazing.
It's awesome. I mean, could probably understand why they come to you. You do have a very nice spirit about you. So you can tell that there is definitely an attraction there. I think this has been amazing. It has been so awesome having the opportunity to talk to you. You and Craig, you guys are doing great work that we truly appreciate. We think it's amazing. And as I said, we definitely want to join you on one of these retreats for sure.
We're going to Costa Rica in January, Portugal in May, and I believe we're going to do like a Sicily Island thing in September. So those are the ones that are coming up. Oh, and there's Thailand in March too. So
I can get my egg protein.
Yes.
What was that line from Seinfeld with Kramer? Top of the morning to ya. I feel like you have your own way of like looking at food, and I love that so very much. Great episode, by the way, with the muffins. We'll definitely put Keto Maria website. I mean, guys, if you can't spell that, you go in the show notes, but it's kind of obvious. Head on over there. You can get the keto or the macro calculator. You can get her recipes. You can find out more about her and Craig and the amazing work they do, and perhaps you'll even be joining us on a retreat with Maria.
Awesome. So much fun. So much fun. It was great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.